welcome to today's edition of the Bradley Hall Show. I am your host, the Bradley Hall. First, I just wanted to say thank you. Whether you're watching or you're listening, we certainly appreciate your support. We'd like to ask you for your help to please share on social media and with someone you know that may be interested. For more information on what I do and how to work with me, please visit my website at www.thebradleyhall.com. I am here with fellow NPE and my friend, Hope Lamonica. Welcome, Hope.
Thank you, Bradley.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. Okay, so we don't script anything, right? We haven't talked about this at all.
I have no clue. I'm kind of nervous.
Oh, no. And I like it to be this way. I like to have organic conversation. And you and I have never really talked about your NPE experience.
No, we haven't.
We haven't. So I know a little bit, but I don't know a whole lot. So this is good. This will be like a fact-finding mission for me. So do you want to start by sharing a little bit about your story?
Sure. So let's see. I guess when I hear so many of our stories, they're so similar that we weren't exactly looking for anything. I wasn't looking for anything except my story tracks back to I went to Tanzania on a mission trip back in 2009. And while I was there, the African people, I asked them, what tribe, because they would tell everyone what tribe, or they would talk about what tribe they were from. And they said,
so they would talk. I don't mean to cut you off. I mean, I do mean to cut you off, but I apologize for doing so. So you mean the tourists, that they would talk about the tourists and they would tell them who they look like and what tribe they were from? Is that what you mean?
Right. So actually,
wow, that's fascinating.
Our particular trip that we went on, there were 12 of us, 9 Caucasian and 3 African Americans. So we were very much wanted to see, like, is this where our ancestors walked the ground?
Sure.
So, and so they told me, they said, well, you look Congo or Cameroon, like you're one of those two.
Okay,
that's interesting. So speed up to 4 years ago, one of my friends did an ancestry test, and she was adopted, and she had posted her results on Facebook. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I've been wanting to find out where I'm from. Let's do it. So I took the test, got it, spit in the tube, mailed it off to Ancestry. And
what year was this?
And 2000. What year are we at?
I don't even know anymore.
I still feel like I'm stuck in 2020. 2007, 2017.
Okay.
I think 18, 19, 20, 2018 I did my test. So I kept checking, they would send emails that they got your test and they had extracted the data. And so it finally came up. It was like, oh, your test results are in. And I was so excited. I'll never forget, my oldest daughter was home visiting with my mother-in-law. They were both here. And so we're looking at the results, and sure enough, it came back that I was Cameroon and Congo.
Wow.
So I was like, that's wow,
cool.
that was pretty cool. So they got it. They got that part right. So I really wasn't even thinking about looking at the matches, because it pops up. Oh, yeah. Here, look at these matches. So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. So let me see if some of my cousins or aunts had taken the test. So I clicked on the button, it said matches. And the first one that comes up, anyone that's done DNA tests knows that it goes by centimorgans. And the higher the centimorgan, the closer the match is to you. So the person that came up to me was over 3,000 centimorgans. And it said that they were either a parent, a child, or like a twin. It was something like
Yeah.
crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
So for people who don't know, I mean, 3,000 centim organs is a lot. That's a whole lot. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like going, okay, I haven't had a child and I don't think I have any siblings that, I don't know about. I have one older brother. And so I reached out to the person. I sent them you can message them. And I sent him a message. Well, at that time, I didn't know it was a he. And it just had like this screen name. And so I said, hi. I introduced myself. I said, we came up as a really high match. And I'm trying to figure out, how we're connected. So he started asking me if I knew any of his family names. And I'm like, no, I don't know any of those names. And he asked me if I were, where I was from. And I said, well, I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my mom's name was Lillian, and my dad's name is Wheeler. And he goes, I don't want to cause you any pain. I think I know what this is. And I was like, okay. He was living in Guam at the time. And so he had asked me if I could call him or he could call me back. There was a time difference and he was at work. And so I was like, sure. And so I went about my day and I was, nervous, like going, okay, what is this man going to call and tell me? Um, so he calls and, I pick up, he calls on my home phone, not my cell phone because um, of the charges or whatever. And he says, hi, my name is Melvin. And there's not an easy way to say this, but I'm your biological father.
Wow.
And so I grew up as a Army brat with my mom and my dad uh, for like my entire life. And so I'm like, what do you mean you're my biological father? My dad lives in Oklahoma. Um,
Now, are your parents still together?
uh, my mom passed away
I'm sorry.
in, yeah, 2005. And then my dad passed away probably I found out July 7th, 2018. It's been 4 years. Yeah, I just celebrated 4 years. So
Okay.
and he passed away in February after I found out.
Okay. Did you ever have a conversation with him about it?
I did. I did. So that was a whole process. So after I talked to Melvin for about 3 hours that night as he explained to me that he was in the military, in the Air Force, and he didn't know that my mom was married. And they
Okay.
dated for about 3 weeks. And he kind of figured out that she wasn't the right woman for him and that she had called to tell him that she was pregnant.
Oh,
So, yeah.
so
So
this wasn't a complete shock to him.
no, he always knew
Wow.
that the cool part of this is he always knew that he had a daughter. She called and let him know when she was pregnant, and she called and let him know after she had me.
Okay.
So um, his hope in doing the DNA test would be that one day he would find me. And his family knew. He had told all of his family that he had a daughter
Okay.
out there.
All right. So many questions. I have so many, and I know everyone watching has some questions as well. I only want you to answer what you feel comfortable answering, right? I mean, this is sensitive stuff, and if you're open, you're open. But if you're not, if you don't want to answer something,
I
please don't.
I am an open book. My hope is that by me sharing my story and you sharing your story, that someone listening, it will help them
Yeah,
through
yeah,
this
and
process.
we know that it does, don't we?
Right. Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
they all helped me when I found out, and I've had several people tell me that my stories helped them, and that's what it's all about. So that's why we're here.
Mhm.
All right. So Melvin's still alive.
Melvin is still alive. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Did your do you think your mother wanted to be with him?
No, I'm trying. My mother was very promiscuous, so she.
A lot of people are.
Mhm.
There's no judgments coming here
Right.
whatsoever. Especially the
So,
more you're involved with this, and you realize this is what people do, and
mhm.
we cope with life the best we can, and some people do it differently than others. So,
Yeah.
um,
So my during my process after I found out in July, um, I had to make that decision. Do I ask my dad? Because I didn't know if he knew, because my dad, I was a daddy's girl, and he's my daddy, and
yeah,
I was his world, and he was my world, and we talked at least 3 to 4 times a week. We were really
wow,
close. We were really close. Um, and I didn't want to hurt him if for some reason he didn't know and he thought I was his child. And so
yeah,
I had made the decision that I was prepared to take this to my grave with me,
okay.
and not share this information.
And
Um,
I'd like to stop on that. There are a lot of people who make that decision, and it is not an easy decision to make. And we see people. I I make I'm the opposite. I talk about everything to everybody. I just I mean, if you tell me a secret and tell me not to tell anyone, I won't tell anyone unless you know it's going to hurt
right,
somebody. Um, but I'm pretty open. I'm very open.
mhm,
But I don't. I see a lot of people who either make the decision you made or make the decision I made, and they judge and shame other people for that. And we got to stop doing that, because these are personal decisions that are made for intricate reasons. There's so many variables in each equation. There is no blanket decision that can be made in this situation.
right,
And so I really, and I teach a lot about personal independence and owning your story and not being afraid of the truth and standing up and in the storm and that all that kind of stuff.
right,
But sometimes the best thing for us is making a decision to benefit someone else,
right, right.
and only you can know that. So I that's my long-winded way of commending you for making that decision. I'm sure it was not easy.
Right. So, and it was tough. I mean, I went through, I mean, so first I'm dealing with the whole new identity. Who am I? You
Right.
know, that when I look in the mirror, I'm not the person who I thought I was. Then I'm wondering, okay, does my dad know? How do I find out if he knows? I don't want to hurt him. So I actually went, my dad served 23 years in the military and retired. And I had to write, um, for his military records, which is a little bit more difficult because he's still living.
Yeah.
So there's that release of information or whatever that's called. Um, so I had to call the person once I sent the information in and explain to her. I said, "This is what happened. I took a DNA test, and the man that my father, I don't know if he knows that I'm not his child." And she's like, "I understand." And so she sent me the information. And so it was his DD 214 that told where he had been. And it showed that he was in Korea when I was born. So then I had my friends going that knew, they were like, well, maybe he came home on leave and you were conceived during that time. So he thinks, and he just doesn't know. And so I went through that, and it's just like I was really depressed. I cried all the time. It was just holding on to that
Yeah.
was horrible, horrible. Um, so I finally got the nerve and I called his sister, um, and I said, Aunt Maddie, I said, I have a question for you. I said, what do you know about my birth? And she said, that you're not your father's child. Just like that. I was like,
Oh, it's about time you called.
yeah. And I was just like, wow. wow,
Yeah.
and and we talked, and I guess she thought that I knew. And and I asked her, I said, well, don't say anything to my dad because I don't want to hurt him. Um, and so that was probably about September. And then October, I get a call from my dad, and he goes, baby, he goes, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. He said, I love you. You've always been my princess. And what I'm going to say, nothing is going to change. He goes, I'm not your biological father. And I was like, I know. And, he went through and told me what happened, that he came home. Um, I was born November 23rd, and he came home in December. And when he came home, there was this 1-month-old baby in the crib
That he did not know was there.
that he did not
Wow.
know was there.
Wow.
And my mom told him that he asked her whose baby it was. And she's like, it's my baby. And he said he grabbed his stuff up. He had just came from Korea, called a cab, and was going to leave. And he said she stood in front of the car and begged him not to leave. And he said he stayed, and he never looked back. And I was his daughter. And he asked her to tell me the truth one day, and she never did. And so she took that to her grave, and he didn't feel it was his place to tell me because
Mm.
that was her story.
And you were about what, late 30s when your mother passed away?
Uh, 2005, yes,
Okay.
40, yeah.
Okay.
So I
So she
made
had
my story
plenty of time.
right,
Yeah.
plenty of time to tell me, lots and lots of time, and
Yeah,
and then
lots and lots of time. We've had that discussion on this show a couple times, that what is the right time? And I don't know what the right time is. I don't, I 8 is way too early in my opinion. 12 is probably too early depending on circumstances. I don't know about 16, but at 18, your excuses start to slide really fast. By the time we've hit 21, there's no excuses anymore. There just isn't. Unless there are mental health issues involved.
right,
And in a case where someone may not be able to, that maybe having struggling mentally with their daily life, and they don't need something like that at the moment. But I can't, late 30s where she had her chance, right?
right. Well, and then my dad even told me that he says, you don't even remember. He said, they were both visiting. I had just had my daughter, and there was something weird about her blood type. And I asked him his blood type, and I asked my mom's blood type. And he said, there was no way what your blood type was that I could have been your father. He goes, and I thought you would have figured it out at
Yeah.
that point. And
No,
he
you
says,
weren't focused on that.
no, he goes, and I asked her to tell you then. And she was like, no, it's not the right time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because most of the time we see that mothers in this situation are hiding it from both parties, and that's why the small lie becomes a big lie,
right.
which is the way life works. A small one becomes very big and becomes harder and harder and harder to come through with that. It's interesting though that she had that were they still married when she died?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so he was on her side. He would have sat right there. It's interesting that she chose you. Do you have any insight as to why she didn't elect to tell you? Other than
No,
just maybe she was embarrassed, you think? I don't know.
I I have we weren't close, my mom. She's I see now, she was very abusive as I was
I'm
growing
sorry.
up. So now I know, I think it's a little bit easier because I never understood why she treated me the way she did. And so now it's like, I think every time she saw me, she saw what she had did. It
Yeah.
faced her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about abuse, and everybody's fighting a battle. and people who are the worst are probably have had the worst. Not always, but um, so that's too bad. I'm curious. You say you didn't have a very good relationship with her anyway. So how do you feel about it right now that she didn't tell you? Have you resolved that yet?
I did. I actually, after my dad passed away in February, he backtracked. He knew I had found my biological father and encouraged me to meet him.
Good.
And then he got sick, and then he passed away. And so I went to both. Their graves are together, and I went to the grave, and I just told her that I forgave her. I forgave them both um, for keeping that from me. That God knew when I needed to find that information out. There was some time, I went through an ugly divorce and some things, just different problems. And I think He knew when I was going to be strong enough to be able to face the news that I was going to get. In my
Yeah.
20s or my 30s, I wasn't ready. I don't know what I would have done, to be dealing with some other hard, some abuse. I was in
Yeah.
an abusive marriage. And so then to face that also would have not been healthy or good.
Yeah, I can certainly see that, especially if your relationship with your daddy was strong, to disrupt that. And it's so easy. Well, people don't understand. My dad and I discussed this before I got confirmation, and he supported me through the whole thing. It still supports me, and we have a great relationship because of. I mean, because of it or in spite of it. I don't know what you want to say, but my point is it still in the beginning it disrupted that relationship. It gave there's that mental feeling like I really don't belong here. And so if I don't belong here, what am I doing here? And not that I ever questioned my relationship with him, but is that something you went through as well? Did you question your relationship with the man that you call dad at all?
I didn't question my relationship with him. I think I went through periods where I questioned my relationship, like, you know, hard to say. I mean, amazing man that would take someone else's child and raise them
Yeah,
as their
agreed.
own, you know.
It's
But
exactly
then,
what my dad did. Exactly. He came home
right,
from Vietnam,
right,
and I was born 9 months to the day after. That
yeah,
was
you
the
know, and
excuse used. But yeah, go ahead. I'm
yeah.
right there
So
with you.
just to know, and trying not to be angry at him for not telling me,
Yeah,
So I battled with that a lot. Like, this is men who treated me better than people treat their own blood children,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then gave me the world and was literally my best friend. My dad was my best friend.
yeah,
And so to
Y-
have those two sides, the anger and the love,
yeah.
just
And that's where that's where rationale has to come in. It sounds to me, I don't know, you know him better than I do, but it sounds like he was worried about disrupting your relationship with each other that may be changing permanently. And I, I'm sure that was terrifying. I'm sure it was terrifying.
right. Yeah.
Mm.
And that was, where I made that decision, like, I don't want to change our relationship.
Yeah.
And then my daughters were like, don't tell him, you're going to run everything if he knows this, because they found out. I mean, I told them, of course, and they had to go through their own process of it. So everyone, it's weird. Everyone thinks about the people involved, but they don't really think about us and what we're going through,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, if that makes sense, yeah, and I think we do too. We're all concerned about everyone else and how they're gonna respond and how they're gonna feel, and we forget about us.
Yeah. It's it's chaos. It's just traumatic chaos. And to hear people say that it's not trauma and they don't understand, and but they're still your dad, or whatever, there's
Mhm,
just so much going on. There's so many conflicting emotions. There's war, there's conditioning, there's potential emotional abuse or physical abuse, and the unhealthy condition that comes with that. There's worried about upsetting everyone. I tell the story every once in a while that I was probably a year in, and one day all of a sudden it hit me. Oh my gosh, I didn't ask my sisters how this affects them.
mhm,
I,
yeah,
you know, I I was so focused on the main players, which myself and my mother and my father and my biological father, that I had it just had completely slipped my mind that my sisters now instead of, I was no longer their brother, I was their half brother, and that they got to deal with that.
right.
Um, there's just so many pieces and so many variables, which is what makes this so difficult to navigate. And it seems like we're about the same on our discovery timeline. I think mine might have been December of 2017, and I've got like a bumpy timeline, but I think I got my
Right?
I
It's
think
the
I got my
age thing, it's the
yeah.
age.
I think I got my results in December of 2017 and confirmation in June of 2018, which doesn't make sense, but I'll tell my story some other time. Um, I I can see a progressive timeline of my healing from the complete chaos and darkness that start and the anger that started, and then getting into the group MP friends group on Facebook, and then the healing process to start. And that's how I've been able to put that MPE experience together, because I can see the benchmarks of the when I move beyond something, I move beyond something else, I move beyond something else. And it seems like we're kind of in the same place. I mean, have you experienced that as well?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my case, you know, it's just crazy, right? Around the time of my discovery, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and which
I
was
did
probably
too.
about, yeah,
Yeah,
the stress.
and I think it's stress related. I think it's trauma related.
Mhm.
So are you getting better with it?
Yeah,
Yeah, me
I'm in
too.
remission. I'm in remission now. So
The farther I get away from it, the better I get from.
right,
It's crazy how that happens.
it happens. But so I went through that, and then my dad getting sick, and then eventually passing away. So it was a lot to
Yeah,
emotionally, mentally. It's like, okay, which one do I deal with first?
right.
And I think I got so focused on my dad being sick and having to fly back and forth that I didn't have a lot of time to think about the NPE, being
Yeah,
an NPE and what that looked like. So trying to grieve and my identity and to grieve the loss of my daddy all
yeah,
at the same time was I, going went through a pretty dark time, and
yeah.
the NPE group, I've been there from the start. I think I was member number 12. Um,
Wow, that's
so
impressive. I think I was like like 1,012 or something like that. So that's
so
impressive. You should have like an ID badge or a
I
plaque or
know,
something that says number
right?
12.
But yeah, that was just, Googling like, what do you do when you take a DNA test and you find out your father's not your father? And up pops this Facebook group that Catherine had created. So
Yeah.
That's how I found it. But
And for people who are listening and don't know what we're talking about, it's a group, a sport group on Facebook for people who have encountered this kind of experience. And we're 8,300, 8,400 now. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yes,
People in this group. Hope's number 12. She's a charter member.
charter
That that's
member.
that's what we're going to tell Catherine. You need a plaque that says you're a charter member.
Member, right?
And the growth has just been phenomenal. And we know it's just scratching the surface. That it's such a small part of the people out there that haven't found the group or aren't on Facebook, or
Yeah,
don't talk about it on Facebook.
right.
Um,
And like you said, talking, I share. It's, I don't know, I'm like a parrot. I think I have to tell everybody my story. And just it's like, oh, is your dad alive? Or some question they'll ask. And then it's like, well, I can't really say, well, my biological dad's alive, but my dad the rate. And so it's not like an easy
yeah,
answer. So then I have to tell the whole story. And
right.
it, and then it never fails. It's like, oh my gosh, that happened to my friend, or that happened to a family member, it happened to me. And, being able, and they're like, we didn't know that there was someone else out there
That's right.
that understands.
Yeah, yeah. My favorite is family history.
Mhm. Oh, when you
I
go
don't know
to
which.
the
I give the
to the
short.
doctor.
Yeah. I'm to the short version now. I just don't even. I just skip right over it. But when you say about telling your story, there's something really cathartic about telling your story. And so I was raised to be to not there. There was a lot of unhealthy stuff going on in the background when I was raised, and it's intergenerational trauma handed down, and we don't talk about our business, and it just wasn't a healthy environment. and
See, I
and
thought
like
that
a
was
lot.
only in the Black household that don't don't you tell what happens in this house.
That's right. That's right. And I think a lot of people our age, times are different. The older generation, the boomers came, their parents didn't talk about anything,
Mhm.
so a lot of the boomers didn't really talk about anything or talk about as much. So our generation's kind of caught in that middle. And today's different. I mean, we got
Right.
podcasts and YouTube, and everybody's got their stuff on social media. And I think it's a good thing. So I was raised to not tell anybody anything. And I remember before I realized I had trauma, when I thought I was normal and everybody else in the world was screwed up. Um, I I, I remember when people they would just vomit their trauma on me,
Mhm.
and I would think, why in the world is this person telling me this kind of stuff?
Right.
And now I realize, and I want people who may think that, to realize that it's because they have to talk about it. It's their healing
It's
process.
healing. It is so healing
Yeah, yeah. And
every
the
time.
more we can talk about it, the more we can normalize it. And we're seeing now, as more and more people are talking about, we're finding out that we're all screwed up. So
Yeah.
some people just hide it better than other people, right? Right.
Right. Yeah.
So
And definitely
um
social media as places like Clubhouse and TikTok, and Facebook. Yeah, everyone's sharing. Like, I think it's so healing, to share your story.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we have someone watching from the MP group. Her name's Monica. Give Monica a big shout out here.
Hey,
And
Monica.
Monica wants to know if you're an only child.
I am not an only child. I have a brother who is 12 years older than I am.
Okay.
We're not close, very close, but I just met, he has a daughter who's an MPE that I just found from her doing a DNA test.
Wow.
And we met for the first time. And I think in May, she messaged me and said, hey, we're really high match. And I'm like, call me. And um, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're my niece. So I got to meet her in July.
Okay.
And so
So
she's part of the
had your
group.
brother, she already been in contact with your brother, or?
No, I got to call and tell him that he had a daughter.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
you were like, did everybody look at you and you're like, you're the most qualified here to make this phone call?
phone call and just like, she didn't want, I'm like, I'll call him. So yeah, it's just crazy. My dad, actually my biological dad found his sister on Ancestry. So I found her and connected them. And so it's every time I turn around, there's someone new coming out. So, and I just want to throw that out there too. I had actually a friend, and she's supposed to watch tonight, and she had someone that's a possible half brother for her,
Okay.
and she was like, "Why is he calling me? What does he want?" And I'm like, he just, if someone, it's not going to be if someone reaches out to you after doing a DNA test, it's when, and just
Yeah.
give them grace. Um, this is shocking news for them, and they just want to know who they are, where they come from,
Yep.
maybe a little bit of medical history, but they don't want, I can tell you probably 99.5% of the time, it's not about money, it's not about wanting anything,
It's
but
about
just,
acknowledgement, you
yeah,
know, it's just somebody to say, okay, I see you. I recognize you're related to me, and then you can negotiate from there how you fit in.
right.
And I know
So,
in my situation with my biological family, they were very welcoming, very welcoming. It probably didn't hurt that I looked like all of them.
right,
I didn't look like anybody growing up. I looked like my mother and my mother's grandfather, but it wasn't enough to, and then I met all these people and I'm like, wow, there's like dozens of them. And I looked, but they they were all very welcoming, and it helps so much. And as soon as I got to meet all of them, there, and I don't mean this in a trivial kind of way, that eventually the shininess wore off a little bit. I was like, okay, I can settle into this a little bit. So there's anxiety that comes with meeting your new family and wanting to connect
right,
and wanting to find them, and that, which is exactly what you were just saying. Just give them some space, give them some time and some opportunity. It'll calm down.
right.
It will settle, but this is certainly part of their healing. I want to go back to the extra DNA discoveries in my new family. My biological father had three siblings, and my biological father passed away in 2004. I never got to meet him, and two of his other siblings had passed away, and so there was one remaining sibling. And thank God I got to meet him before he passed away. He was very ill, and I got to go up and meet him. The family really welcomed me in, and when I got out of the car to meet him, I heard him mumble under his breath, "Oh my God, you look just like my brother." Now that validation right there, he has no idea what kind of an impact that had on me.
Right.
One of my cousins, so my biological father's brother, his daughter Michelle, uh, she was one of them that welcomed me in, and we kind of hit it off on Facebook. I haven't had a chance to meet her because of COVID, unfortunately, and but we hit it off on Facebook. And a couple months ago, she sends me a message and was like, "I took a DNA test and something's really wrong." And the irony of that whole thing is that she welcomed me into the family, and she's not biologically part of the family. She was like, how crazy is this that you pop in and I pop out, and so she's now part of the group. um
And I think
you can't
I
make this stuff up.
I even with my new niece Nicole, I say, we were talking about timing, the right timing. And I said, I think I went through this first. So now I can walk with her through
Yeah.
this process,
Yep. Yeah.
of what it's like to find this information out, and to know what it feels like, and to welcome her, and introduce her to other family members
Yeah.
and that type of thing. So
Yeah, I did the same with my nephew, and I said the same thing to my wife once. I said, I think that I have gone through this so I can help him go through this. um it but I think people will be shocked before this is over. Everyone will be related to an NPE. I am convinced. I'm convinced,
I'm
because
convinced.
so many people that we talk to in the group, there are so many NPEs in their family that it can't just be their NPE families and they're not NPE families. I think they're just families that haven't discovered who it is yet. I
Yeah,
really believe that.
yeah. And then I do some clubhouse, you know, like this where people can come in and talk. And so many times they come in and they're like, oh, I did this DNA test and there's some things that are off. And I have learned
Yeah.
to have to control my mouth to go, your
Yep.
dad's probably not your dad. Cause it's just like,
Yeah.
they're not ready for that. But I'm like, yeah, this is what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Paulette and I were involved in a conversation on Facebook. It was in a trauma group, and someone started down that thread, and her and I talked behind the scenes. I said, I don't know how to answer this person.
Mhm.
I clearly see what's happening, but we have to let it develop in its own time. I can't just be the one because I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what kind of support she has. I didn't know what her life looks like, what kind of mental health history she has. She's in a trauma group. I don't know what, and I can't be responsible to just let that cat out of the bag and not have any type of support, or it's a very delicate situation for sure. All right, so give your clubhouse plug. Tell everybody where it's at.
Oh gosh. You put me on the spot. I'm like trying
Uh,
to think of the group right now.
all right.
And
Well, if you think about it, I'll
it's
cover it.
genealogy. Our club is called Genealogy, and I do DNA surprises
Okay,
once a week. So
once a week. Is it the same night every week?
I bounce between Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay, I knew it was Thursdays, but I didn't want to say Thursday if you moved it
Right.
and confuse everyone. So, okay, good. So if anybody's on Clubhouse and they want to know more or just meet meet Hope, her club is Genealogy on Clubhouse. I don't even know how it works.
Yeah, it's a crazy.
I have it on my phone. I tell you what, I never thought I'd be this guy, but I'm starting to be the guy. I don't want any new apps. I don't want Facebook to change anything. I'm getting real tired of it.
Real tired, right?
Somebody said, "Do you know how to use?" I said, "No. Pretend that you just handed your grandpa an iPhone, and walk me through it like a 4-year-old. Don't. Tired of figuring it out." So I have it on my phone, and I need to come join you. You've asked me, and I've been busy, more
Need
busier
men
than
sharing their stories. Women are,
yeah.
we'll talk to everyone, but men, I don't feel like if they hear another man talking, then they're more likely to speak up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. And we need more men. I think I meant to get the numbers from Catherine in the Facebook group. Do you know what percentage are men of that 83, 8,400?
I would say, I believe there's like 30%.
Okay, that's better than I thought. I thought it was like 10 to 20, but I was guessing. I didn't know.
Right.
If there's 30%, those 30%, only 10% of that 30% are talking, because I didn't know
Right.
there were that many in there.
Hmm.
But obviously, we know that number should be more like 50%.
Right.
So, there should be another 1 to 2,000 people in there that should be males. We're certainly underrepresented. But I think, I wonder what the percentage of Facebook users are, men to women. Do you know what that is?
I have no clue. I have no clue, but I just know that all of my groups that I run, it's always more women than I have. Even
Yeah.
my date, I have a dating group, and it's almost 3,000 people. And I was looking, I think it was like 18 to 19% were men,
Yeah.
the rest were women.
Well, how does
So
that work?
yeah, it's not, yeah, it's I'm like there should be no single men in this group right now.
Yeah. 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 That's too funny. So, all right. So, and are you going to the retreat in Arkansas in October?
I am not going to the retreat.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, with I'm immunocompromised, and
Yes, certainly.
yes, so I wish I could, but
Yeah.
next year, hopefully.
Okay. And you were planning, we talked about this before we started, that you were trying to plan an NP group trip.
Cruise, yeah, we went, was it last 2020? Is that when we
No,
went?
no, no. It was 2
I'm
years
sorry,
ago.
not to 19,
Yeah.
18, 2018.
No, I think it was 19. Wasn't it 2 years? I think it
19?
was 2 years ago. I think
July, July,
it
yes.
was actually I think it
Or
was in
maybe,
August. I think it was 2 years ago last week.
okay. I told you the memory, it's gone.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I know that is I saw a Facebook memory of you and I standing on the beach trying to
Beach ticket,
light those damn lamps.
yes.
The wind was blowing. It wouldn't light or
Well,
whatever.
like,
So,
right. So
uh,
yeah, we're talking about doing 2023 because we're hoping by then all of this COVID will be gone and it'll be safe to get together
yeah,
in
yeah.
groups. So
It sounds like so far away, but it'll be here before we know it.
before
Time's
we
just
know
flying
it,
by.
yes.
So, okay. Well, I hope, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah. Oh, just as I said, that it's not if, it's when that you do a DNA test or you have your information out there, that someone will reach out to you and have questions, and just be open, transparent, just let them know what they need to know, um, especially the health information is passed along real quick. I had always had some heart palpitations and heart murmur and things, and I went to my cardiologist, and um, she did the ultrasound and saw that I had, so I can't remember what it's called, but thickening of one side of my heart. And she's like, well, you don't have high blood pressure, and this is usually hereditary. And I was like, well, my mom and dad, this is before I found out, they don't have any heart issues, just high cholesterol. And she's like, no, that's not it. And so she couldn't figure out how I got this. And then once I met my biological father, he shared with me that his dad died at 53 of heart failure. His brother died at 53 of heart failure, and he um, was had to have emergency stents put in
Wow.
his heart. And so when I went back and told her that, it put the puzzle pieces together.
Right.
So,
Right.
that everyone keeping that secret from me could have cost me, you know, my life. But,
Yeah.
the same thing, it's like share, that's what people need to know. If there's a family history of breast cancer or colon cancer or, heart problems, let them know so that they can take the appropriate steps that they need to make.
Yeah. That's a great point. I hope that you are it sounds like you've taken that seriously and you're taking precautions to
Yeah,
rectify that.
it's
I know.
it's much better now. Now that she knows the
Good.
medicine to put me on to
Good.
correct it. Yeah.
Good. 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 The I found out I had a diagnosis of esophageal precancer, and 2 or 3 days later I found out that I thought my biological father had died of a heart attack, and he did die of a heart attack, but they believe it was complications from his esophageal cancer.
Wow.
And I found out in the same week. And it I don't know if it's going to save my life or not, but you better believe it got my attention.
Mhm.
And I've thought about it, and ever since, so I just take it more seriously, and that has to have a positive effect. So, and that's just a minor, I mean, it's way different than your situation and some other situations that people are in. So but that's a very, very valid point, that the family medical history. And I know that uh, there are some people that are working for an organization called the Right to Know, and they were working really hard to get this information available to all of us, that we have the right to know who our biological parents are. And medical history is one of the top reasons for that. And I'm a big advocate. The world's changed it's changed so much. And there's a lot of more argument that comes behind whether you have adopted parents, or in the situation where your dad stepped up. Um, I know there's a lot of more argument, but in the end, at some point, everybody has a right to know, especially when they're an adult, for the medical history reason. And I firmly believe that.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you have a good relationship with Melvin?
I do. I do.
Good.
He's amazing. I'm ADD, and I always wondered where I got that from. And so he laughs now because since meeting him, I'm like, you definitely have ADD. And so he was like, yeah, my nephew has it. And so we joke about that all the time because he texts me and his texts are like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Because he's all over the place. Then I do that. I start conversations in the middle. And so I'm like, that's where I got that from. So just seeing those things. We met right away. Well, he came home from Guam in December, and him and his wife flew here to Colorado from Atlanta in
Nice.
January, so we can meet for the first time. And I did a cute little, had all my friends at that point knew, and I did kind of it's a girl party. Um, and so all my friends came over and met him, and so
That's
that was
awesome. I
so
think you've heard me talk enough that I'm real big on finding the positives, and not from a fake standpoint of these gurus are like, you should always be happy, and I'm not like that. I mean, we need to
right,
process our emotions, but at the end of the day, someone always has something worse than we do, and
mhm,
gratitude is rooted in understanding that fact.
right,
And I am warmed, and I hope everyone else here that's listening is, by the fact that despite the fact that you lost one daddy, that you got another father.
mhm.
And I think that's awesome. I think that's a beautiful fairy tale ending, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I always say that God, um, I didn't have the best mom in the world, but God blessed me with two amazing
That's
dads.
awesome. That's
So
awesome.
I'm, you know,
That's a,
I'm
that
I'm
that
blessed.
is a perfect ending to this interview, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Hope you're amazing. I thank you so much for joining me. I'd like to talk to you some more about. We didn't get to talk about your Congo and Cameroon. Have you done anything with that?
No, I haven't, but well, I'm in a couple different Facebook groups
Okay.
and just trying to narrow that down to the area.
Okay.
Um, and
Well,
I
I
want to go
I have
back.
some insight on that.
Do you?
Kind of.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll get with you, and we'll talk about that. And then if you do something with it, then we'll have you come back. We'll talk about it again.
Awesome. Yeah,
Okay.
great.
Awesome. Well, again, I appreciate it. Appreciate you, and you have a good night. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Good
All right.
night.
Thanks. Good night. Thanks for watching, everyone. We appreciate you joining us live. See you in 2 weeks.